Welcome back. This is episode 41 of the podcast. I really feel like I'm back in a role now with getting these episodes out every week. It's taken a while, but you know what has really helped is that I've given up a bit of control and perfectionism here. Like, I can't afford an editor, but I can afford to pay for some software to help me. So I usually edit my episodes quite manually in Premiere Pro and Audition. It takes me a long time. I'm not great at it, and it takes ages. So if I'm just doing a very basic edit for an hour episode, it'll take me 2 hours to do that, plus probably another 20 minutes to half an hour to come up with a title, write the description, upload it, schedule it. Well, I've stopped being so controlling, and I've been trialing using Descript for the past 2, maybe 3 episodes. And I get it to remove all the ums for me. I get it to shorten some of the long pauses, which happen sometimes in recordings. And then I get it to generate a summary of the episode for me with chapters. Now, it's not perfect, right? I edit the summary, but the chapters I keep, they're sort of not as important. And the edit of the episode is pretty good. And then I just go through and tweak it. It is a lot quicker. So the lesson, stop being so proud, get some help. I'll get off my high horse though. Enjoy this episode. I'm talking with Alysia, or Alysia East. She is amazing. The poor thing has been waiting for months and months and months and months for this episode to come out. She actually sent me an email today or yesterday just checking in and seeing how I was and if it was still coming out. She was lovely. I'd probably be quite rude if I'd recorded an episode with somebody and hadn't heard from them and it had been months. Anyway, it was such uncanny timing because I was actually preparing to edit her episode this week. So there you go. It was meant to be. Enjoy this one. It's pretty full on, but in an amazing way. Alyssia just bears all. It's a really powerful episode. And it's a bit of a longer one, but I just couldn't split it up. You can't. You got to have it in one. Anyway, I'm going to stop rambling. This is quite a long intro, but I do like having a bit of a yarn at the beginning. All right, let's roll the intro. G'day, and welcome to the Pursuit of Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Rosie Burrows, and I'm on a journey to find my freedom so that I can help you do exactly the same. Join me each week as I share the stories of everyday people who have found their own path to freedom. I'm not going to focus on job titles and accolades because I don't care about that stuff, and neither should you. I want to uncover what truly makes you tick. Who are you when you step away from society's expectations and follow your heart? I still haven't figured it out yet. Have you? Either way, buckle up because it's going to be one hell of a ride. Welcome back to the Pursuit of Freedom podcast. I am recording at my friend's house today. I'll be moving back into my van this afternoon, actually, which I'm really excited about. There is a storm brewing outside, so if there's some background noise, that's what's going on. And please bear with us. I think it's worth pushing through the recording because my guest today has so much to share. And just before we hit record, we actually had a conversation about changing the direction of this episode. It's going to be raw, it's going to be emotional, and just a trigger warning that we will be discussing abuse and topics around that. So if you need to give this one a pass, please do. You need to look after yourself. If you need to come back at a different time, do that too. Or you can just come back next week for a different episode. Joining us is Alysia East. Ali, thank you so much for making the time to chat with me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. We last spoke in November, so it's now January that we're recording this. Yeah. A lot of podcasts start by talking about the what the guest does, what their job title is. And I could do that, but there is so much more to you than your job title. So, Ali, would you mind sharing with us who you are? Let's go back to Ali as a little girl, and if you had to describe who you were as a person, How would you describe that?
Ooh, who I was as a little girl. So interesting. My name was Lisa as a little girl, which is a lot of my family and friends still call me that, but I don't really identify with that. Um,
Right.
but that little girl was a very quiet, shy, isolated, probably scared little girl that went through a lot of things that she probably shouldn't have had to. And I'm talking in third person right now, but yeah, and had to grow up a lot faster than a child should. I think I had a lot of fear because there were a lot of changes and a lot of things that went on in my life that it wasn't stable, was not stable.
Right.
And I had to grow up a lot faster than children probably should have to.
If you're comfortable, I would love to hear how it felt as a child having to deal with these things that you probably shouldn't have had to deal with. And also comparing that to how you feel today, because I'm sure there's a difference between those two perspectives.
Yeah. So we didn't have a lot. So like I said, it was pretty unstable. And my parents were divorced at the age of 2. And then my mother remarried twice. And they were very abusive relationships. And we moved around a lot. So we moved like every 6 months. And I think the reason, I never really asked my
Wow.
mom this, but I think the reason for that is because it was probably like a 6 month apartment lease. And then we would move, if that makes sense. So I think that's where the fear, the shy, the quiet, all of that came in because I never really had any friends. I didn't make friends until I was in like junior high school, because that's when we stopped moving. So we still moved, but we didn't move as much. So it has a lot to do with, I think, where I came from has really affected who I am today. Of course, I mean, everybody, it does everybody. But instead of being in that cycle, and this is what I hope that your listeners will get out of this, is that you don't have to stay in that cycle. I think that so many people do. Um, you learn from your parents, and you end up. I see so many people end up in that cycle. When you come from an abusive home, you tend to attract that even as an adult. I don't know what the ratios are, percentages or anything like that, but I am thankful that I found a path that I didn't follow that. I actually knew at a young age or a young adult that I didn't want that to happen. I actually was in an slightly abusive relationship, but I got out of it very quickly because I knew I didn't want to be my mom. I
Right.
didn't want to be in those relationships. And if I had children, I don't have any, but if I had children, I wouldn't want them to go through what I went through. Does that make sense?
Definitely. And if we take a step back, as someone who hasn't been in an abusive household, could you share with me what that looked like as a child and how that felt?
Yeah. I will share what I can with you and what I remember. I don't know how much detail I will get into because even though I got out of that cycle, I think a lot of that was suppressed. And so a lot of memories were suppressed and I can't recall a whole lot, but I think I shared with you before, so I'm going through a healing journey myself right now. And so I'm going through things that where I am going back and resolving those emotions. And if anybody's heard of inner child work, going back to that inner child, right? And nurturing and caring for the Lisa that I told you about, right? I remember just watching my mom get hit. And I mean, there were even weapons involved, like guns and, threatening, if you leave, I'm going to shoot you, things like that. And it was very scary. And I actually watched my mom kind of suppress it almost herself. I don't know. Suppress might not be the right word. Cover it up. She became, she on the outside, she was very outgoing. She was very social. She had friends. She was very bubbly. Everybody, she was, just happy and love, people loved to be around her. But it was a cover up. And gosh, if any of my family listens to this, which it's okay. I've mentioned to you that I'm in a place now where I'm really finding my voice because this has for so long has been hidden and has been swept under the rug and has just been not talked about. And I feel like I have a story to tell, and I feel like by telling that it will heal me. And I think that that's, back in the day, a lot older than us. That's what they did. That's what people did. You sweep it under the rug, you don't talk about it. And I think when my mom passed, she was not I mean, people thought she was a very happy person, but she was not. And I knew this. And I knew it because I grew up with her. I was in the same situations that she was in, and I watched her. And not only that, but before she passed, she shared some things with me. I was the oldest child, so I do have two siblings younger than me. And she shared some things with me. And so I knew that she was not happy, when she was during that time. And it makes me really sad. And I think that's where I've come today is to know that, you don't have to be in that cycle. You don't have to be unhappy. One of the things that I kind of live by now is that everything that you do is a choice. And and I choose. Well, everybody, you have the choice. You have the power to choose and create your happiness. And I think about it. I live by that you have a choice. Everything you do is a choice. You can't blame it on other people. And so even being in those abusive relationships, it was my mom's choice, right? That she stayed in those relationships. But I think that she didn't think she had a choice.
Yeah.
And I've I have learned about domestic violence over the years. And I've learned that is the belief of so many women is that they don't have a choice. I've heard even a friend of mine at one time, I'll never forget it. She said she kind of condemned, a person for staying in a relationship like that. And knowing the background that I came in, I'm like, you can't judge. You can't judge them because
Right.
you don't know what they're thinking. You don't know what the situation is. And so I think I may have gotten a little digressed. Did I even answer your question, Rosie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're just going with the flow.
Yeah.
And I think that offered a lot of insight. And I'm wondering, growing up, did you realize this was abuse or domestic violence? Did you realize that?
So I don't know that I realized it as like in elementary years, but
Yeah.
as I got older, as a teenager, yes, I did realize it. And I remember, one time they were never really abusive to me other than, just verbally, but not really. The physical was usually my mom. Well, I say it was directed towards my mom, but actually, I think because they were my stepfathers, she remarried twice. And I think because they were my stepfathers, they didn't touch me. Maybe because I still had my father, and maybe they knew better not to. So I'm thankful for that. I'm blessed for that, that I did have my father, that I had a pretty good relationship with. But obviously I primarily lived with my mom. But yes, as a teenager, I realized it. And at one point, there was my mom and stepfather had gotten into a altercation, and I jumped on him. It's like this thing you see on TV. And he actually, like, I don't know what he did exactly, but he like threw me off of him and did something to my foot. I don't remember what it was. I just remember that my foot hurt. I had something, a little scratch or something on my foot. I don't remember. And so that memory comes to mind. When you ask me that, that memory comes to mind. Like, yes, I knew at that point it was what it was. And I actually, Rosie, at the age of 17, I had just turned 17 and just graduated high school. I moved out. I immediately moved out.
Wow.
Yes. I said, I have to get out of this environment. And again, I'm thankful that I recognized that and that I didn't stay in that.
Yeah. Yeah. I see that as incredibly brave to leave. You know, you're going out on your own and you had the self-awareness to go, I don't want this. And you got out. I know through talking to others who have been in abusive households or experienced abuse, it's often they stay in that situation.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. And I am, you know, I am very thankful for that. And what I did though is, I moved out, and then I think I kind of followed in my mom's, not in her footsteps, but just kind of, doing unhealthy things. And I was, risky behaviors. I was all about the fun. Like when I was in high school, I don't know if they even still do this in school, but it was a program where you earn hours. Like I was doing cosmetology. And so you earn all these hours. It's like a work, not really co-op thing, but like I forget what they called it, but they had certain programs that you could do, like mechanic and cosmetology kind of thing. And so I didn't have very many hours left, and I could have been a cosmetologist, just continue school after I graduated. And my very best friend did that, and I'm so proud of her. But I did not. I decided to go and have fun, and that's where I ended up in that abusive that I told you about. When he grabbed my neck and pinned me against the wall, I knew it was time to go, because I knew, it only progressed from there. But I did that for a while until finally, I don't know what came over me, but at the age of, what was I, 25, 24, 25, I don't even remember. I said, again, very thankful for this. I don't know where this thought process came from, but I thought, I have to I need a career. Like I need to do something with my life. I can't continue this way. And dad probably had a lot of influence in that, to be honest, actually. And so that's where I went into nursing school and became a nurse. Yeah.
What are your thoughts, and this might be controversial, around forgiveness? Because this is thrown around a lot. Forgiveness towards women's abuses and your abuses.
Yeah. That has been challenging. And this is where I might get a little bit emotional. Just think I can feel it. As far as me directly in a relationship that I was in, I have a wonderful husband now. But it was very challenging. It has been very challenging to forgive my stepfathers. Now, the one I haven't had contact with him for many, many, many years. And so I actually, I never had any contact with him after. I mean, I was still in elementary. So So I think I was just beyond that. So, but the last husband that my mom has had and is who she was married to when she passed, that has been a process. But I have I want to say I have forgiven him. You can't forget though. It's so hard because you can forgive, but you can't forget. And so I don't think, I personally don't think it's a forgive one and done kind of thing. I think that it's something that you
Right.
have to continually work on because I can forgive, but then that memory comes back and it's like I have to coach myself again. And I think I shared with you when we were talking in November that's kind of where I've gone now is I'm a wellness coach. And so thankfully I can coach myself and coach myself on forgiveness. And there's also a meditation. It's a forgiveness meditation that I really like. And it's something that you can do when you're really feeling kind of triggered or those memories come up. So yeah, so it's a good question. I'm going to share this too, a little tidbit, just because this helps me and it might help others. Because when I think about my mom or when I think about my stepdads or even my dad or whomever, I try to remember that they did the best that they could. And this is everybody. You know what I'm going to say?
Yeah.
Everybody, including me, because I'm not perfect. There are things that I really hope that people have forgiven me for, that I know that I've done wrong. And I didn't know better, but I know better now. And so I do better. And I think that's like a Maya Angelou quote. I don't know. But people really, they do the best with what they have, the resources that they have in that moment at that time. And what I mean by that is if that's what that's, I mean, say for example, let's say for example, I didn't recognize what was happening. I didn't become aware. And I went into the same cycle and I went into an abusive relationship where I treated my children badly or whatever. It's because I don't want to say badly, but anyway, you know what I mean. But it would be because that's what I know. That's what I know to,
Yeah.
and this all gets into like science, which we're not going there, but like it gets into like your survival brain. Like it's, we all function on, in that survival, but like what we need to do to survive and,
Yeah.
or what we're conditioned to do, those learning, all those learned behaviors, all the things that we, you know, as a child, all of that is just ingrained in there. And the repeated behaviors just become something that and you become familiar with it. And so making change is really hard. And, you know, even even if it's something abusive or it's, or even if you're like a mean person, to be a mean person, Rosie, I was mean. I recognize that. I really was. And and I know why. I was mean because that's how I knew to survive. That's how I knew to protect myself. I was protecting
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
And so when people do things that they do, they're doing it because that's what their brain knows, that that's what they need to do to protect themselves. And I am probably not
Yeah.
making any sense. I don't know, but
It makes so much sense. And it makes me think back to my time when I was a youth worker. I would work with girls. I don't like the word work. I would support them. It didn't feel like work. I'd support girls from trauma backgrounds They were labelled as difficult children and they were put into out-of-home care. They were considered too high needs to be placed with foster carers. And you're right, this whole survival mode thing, these children, you, probably your mother, you are in survival mode. You recognise the danger and you're doing all you possibly can to survive. And when you're out of that situation, your brain still thinks you're in danger. Well, this is what I believe. Please correct me if you disagree. And the behaviours that come out, for example, you said you were really mean. The girls I would work with, they would do horrible things. Mm-hmm. You know, assault me as a youth worker, spit on me, set the house on fire, awful things. But I recognised, you know, they're not bad people. Mm-hmm. They were in survival mode. And I think to begin healing, you need to feel safe. Mm-hmm. Whether or not I think you're safe doesn't matter. It matters if you feel safe. Would you agree with that?
100%. Yes, because going back to the brain, again, that's, you know, the number one thing that safety is number one, right? I mean, that is, and that applies in all ways of life. That applies physically, emotionally. You know, are you going to be in a physical, there's so many examples I could use, but I think of like even emotionally in a relationship. Are you going to be safe?
Yeah.
Do you feel safe in this relationship emotionally? Financially, are you safe financially? I mean, you know, there's a lot of different ways that you can think of that, but yes, it all comes down to, do I feel safe? Do I feel threatened? Is there some kind of threat here? And threat might be different for me than what it feels for you. So, you know, we could be having a conversation. If I said something maybe that triggered you in a way that, you know, I could be talking to you and talking to another person here, and something that I say could trigger something in your brain that feels threatening, but not for the other person, because we all grow up differently. And so that reaction is going to be different, or that response. And so those girls that you were working with, or like me, when I was mean, you know, if somebody said something to me that just didn't feel right, I would be ugly back. I mean,
yeah.
You know, so I have a huge heart for hurting people. I mean, well, let me rephrase that. For people who are hurting. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, and we all are in some way, but, you know, for those that just really don't know how to come out of that don't know how to break that cycle, that don't know how to, you know, to find who they really are, find themselves, find their happiness, find their voice, like we were talking about. And so, because that's where I am, you know, this is something that I told you I've not talked about before. This is, yeah, it's hard. It's hard, but in where I am now in my life, my childhood and all of that, it all informs what I do. I wouldn't change anything. I'm thankful because I can relate. I can relate to people, and hopefully be an inspiration and empower people to make a change. But yes, I am. So where I am now is that like I said, I feel like I have a story to tell, and I'm trying to find my voice and get it out there, and help. And like I said, be an inspiration, or even be a voice for those that cannot. So,
right.
Yeah.
Not everybody has a voice. They're silenced, or they might not be in a position to share their story. That could be quite unsafe. Do you think your mum reached that place where she felt safe before she died?
Physically, she was, because the abuse did stop at some point. I mean, they got
Right.
older, and quite honestly, there was an episode where my mom got fed up and she fought, quote unquote, fought back. And it pretty much stopped from then, from that point on with my mom. Now, there was still a lot. Here's where that forgiveness comes in, because,
Right.
man, it's challenging too, because you think this is what my stepfather, and not to tell his story is not my story to tell. However, when we're talking about being in that cycle, right? It's what he grew up with, right? So it's what he grew up with.
Right.
It's what
Yeah.
he knew. That's how he knew to react. And so that's how he treated my mom. That's how he has treated his children, right? And I think about him, and I think, I do forgive him, because I know that he is doing the best with, that's what he knows. He's doing the best with
Right.
what he knows and how to handle it. But then there's that part of me that so bad wants to fix him. But I know I can't.
Right.
I know I can't, right?
Right.
Um, and I forgot where I was going with this.
You brought up forgiveness again. And the fact that your stepfather came from an abusive
Mm-hmm.
background. And then you just mentioned you wish you could fix him, which actually I found surprising, because listening to your story, I feel a lot of anger. Was there anger you had to work through? And how did you get to this point of,
Yes.
I wish I could fix him?
Yeah. So anger, I think that's why I was so mean. I had all this anger
Right.
built up in me, and I didn't know. And this probably relates to just like the example you're with the girls. And they don't know they're angry,
Right.
but they are. They have all this inside. They have all this emotion built up inside and don't know how to handle it. Same thing with me. So, yes, I had all this anger. And and I think you don't know the anger. You don't know to call it anger. Like,
Mm.
you're angry that just in general, you're angry that you grew up in an abusive home. You're angry that you didn't have friends growing up. You're angry that you were, and I'm talking about myself, but angry that you were isolated and picked on in school, or you were the weird kid, or the new kid on the block every 6 months, or um you're angry that you didn't have things that you saw other people have, or the list can go on and on. But yes, relating that directly back to him, that relationship, yes, absolutely, I was angry. Um, um, that you didn't do better. You didn't seek to do better. That you pretended that you didn't do anything wrong, because that did come up. I think that made me more angry than the actual abuse itself, was that it was denied that anything ever happened. And yes, I was very angry about that. Where my life shifted is when, so I grew up in a Christian home. Grew up going, my family is, my grandparents, I should say, devout Christians. And so, but we didn't really, in my immediate family, my mom and everything, we didn't really live that way. But as an adult, this was after I went into nursing school. I started going to therapy, and I gave my life to God and found my faith. And I think that made a huge difference. And I was pretty strong with that for a while, and then I kind of fell off the wagon for a little bit. Um, and then have, started finding my place back in my spiritual walk again. And I think it's very important. It doesn't have to be God for everybody, but I think that it's important that everybody have a spiritual outlet. That has been a big thing for me and has really helped me, because prayer and meditation and just taking care of yourself and honoring yourself and those boundaries we had even touched on, right? Setting those and I don't necessarily mean, when I say boundaries, talking about this, I'm thinking like boundaries for myself. What I will allow and what I won't allow, right? So, um, because like, when I got my house, or when I have visitors from, let's say I have visitors from family members that I know don't get along too well. And I want you to come over, but I'm not having any mess. If you do, you got to go.
Let's go back to this forgiveness thing, because obviously it took you time to get there. And some listeners might be going, fuck that person who abused me. I'm not ever forgiving them. Which, all those feelings are valid, I believe. Do you think getting to that stage where you can forgive your abuser is, or even yourself, I feel like self-forgiveness is part of that. Do you think getting there is how you heal? Like, do you have to get to that point before you can start healing?
I think it's a huge part of it. I think that the thing is that whenever and you may have heard this before, but it's really not about that person. It is about you. You can't change that person. You can't control their actions. They can still be doing all the things that they were doing before, or, and you can't control that. You can only control yourself. And the holding on to the anger and the bitterness and just those resentment, whatever those feelings are, all it is doing is eating you away. It's eating at you. It's because guess what? That person they're doing their thing. They don't know and they don't care, and it's really not about them. It's about you. So when you forgive someone, it's really that you're freeing yourself. You're letting yourself go. You're bringing in peace into yourself. Because I mean, think about it. If you're holding on to the anger and do you think that affects the person? Do you think they care? Do you think you know what I mean? Like they were doing the things that they did to make you angry anyway. So honestly, if you want to get back at them, forgive them. That may be silly to say that, but I'm thinking, I'm thinking, because if they're doing things to you that, their goal might be to get you roused up, but if you let that go and say, you know what, I forgive you, and here's my boundary, and I'm letting that go, and I am honoring. Now listen, it's okay to have those feelings. Okay. It's okay to,
Right.
that's okay. I don't want to get that message out there right now. I don't want to say that you shouldn't be angry or you shouldn't have those feelings. You certainly should, and you should honor those feelings. So it is okay. I mean, we're built to have emotions. It's okay. Um, I think it's important to work through those emotions. Um, if you're angry, go like get a punching ball and punch a ball, like punch the ball. Or if you need to just scream, you know, just scream and let something out. And and so let it out. Process it. Process that emotion. And then and then see how you feel after that. Get it. It always feels better. Like, like if you're driving down the road and somebody cuts in front of you and you flip them off or something, and I mean,
Yeah.
you flip them off and then you feel better, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they don't know that.
Right.
They're just going to keep on driving and doing what they're doing. But it makes you feel better. So you process it. And then you say, okay, I forgive you for cutting in front of me. Maybe you have like a sick child in the car and you're trying to get to the hospital. I don't know. It's okay to have those emotions and feel that way. That's normal. We're human. We're going to. Just don't let it eat you up inside. Say to yourself that he or she this is what they know. This is how they know to, they don't know. This is, all the things that we just talked about. Like they're doing what they know to do best based on what they've
Right.
learned. So I think forgiving just really is more about yourself and releasing all of that from inside and letting yourself breathe and just create a balance within yourself so that you can move forward. And
That is such a useful reframe.
and
It's not
I'm
about
also
them.
right
It's
and
about you.
right and I'm also saying that when you forgive somebody, you're not saying that it's okay that they did that, right? That doesn't mean that it's okay that they did that. You have your emotion, but you're just forgiving. You're not, yeah. You're not giving them permission to do it again. You're not saying it's okay, but
Right.
you're forgiving them for what they did. And then I think it is, and just followed by that is setting that boundary. Now, I have somebody in my life that can really push my buttons. And it's somebody that I love very much, very dearly. And so they know how to push my buttons. And I continually have to, this is an ongoing thing for me. Like I
Right.
continually have to say, but I have to say, okay, I forgive you. They don't know that I'm forgiving them actually, but I am. And then and I'm telling myself, okay, this is this is this is how they know to respond because this is what makes them feel safe. They're in that survival, kind of thing. And so anyway, I don't want to like keep going on and on. But I thought it was important to say, it's not, you're
Yeah.
not saying that it's okay that they did it.
Yeah. And I'm really glad you said that because I think when someone says forgiveness, that's what comes up. Oh, you're saying it's all right.
Yeah.
But it's not about saying it's
No,
okay.
not at all. Yeah.
And it makes me think of a conversation I had recently on the podcast actually with a domestic violence survivor. And I can't remember her exact words, but you were talking about all the anger and these feelings and it taking up so much of your energy. You know, being angry, anger is not the only thing, but taking up so much energy thinking about the situation and
Right.
blaming and all of this. And this lady said, well, who is that helping? It's not helping you. Why are you doing that? You are allowing them to essentially live rent free in your mind.
Exactly.
And when she said that, I went, wow, so true. It sounds so simple, but obviously this isn't easy. And as you said, it's an ongoing process. And you mentioned earlier that you lost your mum in 2014. And, I've lost both my parents, so I'm familiar with grief. And it brings up all sorts of feelings. Did the death of your mum, was it a trigger? Did it bring up memories of childhood? What was that like? I feel like it would have been more than just grieving the loss of your mother.
Yeah, it was. And it's funny because I think a good number of people know, but I still think that a lot of people in my circle don't know that I went into a very deep depression. I didn't know what that was until I went into it and didn't see that coming. But I think it was because we didn't have a good relationship. It's interesting. We had a fun relationship the first 6 years of my life. And then that's when things just kind of, anyway. But I think there were a lot of unresolved things with my mom. I'll share with you that, and I'm still processing this. So I actually, and I highly encourage anyone who has lost anyone that you have therapy, that, if it doesn't have to be long term, it can be short term, but just to ground yourself and just make sure there's not any unresolved things that need to be. But this is something that I'm having to do because but there were a lot of unresolved things that like I said, we didn't have a really good relationship. Now, my father, it did have a pretty good relationship with him. There were some things as a child that, and I'm reading a really good book right now, Rosie. I didn't bring it with me. It's at my bedside, but it's about child neglect. Really good book. I'll have to share it with you, and then maybe you can share it. But it's a really good book about parenting styles, and that, and parents are doing the best they can. It's not, there's neglect in ways that you don't realize it is, and that they didn't mean to. It just happens because that's just the way you interpret and perceive things. Anyway, I won't go into all that. But I was going to say, with my father, before he passed, we actually had a conversation. We had a very deep emotional conversation where we brought some things, put some things on the table. We apologized for things, and we, quote unquote, made up. I'm being silly saying made up, but it sounds like but we came to just a good place for ourselves where I was able to recognize again what I told you about people do the best that they can. And actually, he's the one that told me that years ago. And I recognized that because there were things that happened that, he reacted in ways that, when I look back at it now, I'm like, well, he was young. He was a young parent. He didn't know what else to do. He reacted like that because that's just what he knew to do. But thankfully, we had the conversation, and we were able to, move past that. And so while I'm still sad that he is gone, and it hurts, and I wish every day that he was here, with my mom, we didn't have that opportunity. So I really have to work through a lot of those things in childhood that we have to, and some people can move on and live their life and not be affected by that. But for me, it's my choice. That is something that I want to do, is work through those things and move forward. And again, for the reason that, I hope that I can be, with my story, that I can be an inspiration for people that may have gone through the things that I've gone through.
I have a tradition on this podcast. I like to ask all my guests this question, and I'm impatient to hear your answer because
Okay.
I think you're going to have a good spin on it. What does freedom mean to you?
I love that word. It's funny you asked me that because for my business now, my whole underlying message, I'm reworking everything, and my whole underlying message is all about freedom. So it's funny that you asked me that. I think freedom is an inner healing. I think of it as like being bound by all the things that have happened to you in the past. And a lot of what we just talked about, Rosie, like the forgiveness and finding your voice and getting therapy or coaching or an outlet, your spiritual outlet or connection, all of those things to break those bonds, to break that bond so that you don't. I think getting out of that cycle and not feeling like you have to be in that cycle, freeing yourself from that, freeing yourself from the person that you maybe look back at and you're like, I'm not that person anymore. It's kind of like I told you, Lisa is that little girl, right?
Mm-hmm.
I went through therapy. My therapist said, what she asked me what I wanted to be called. And I said, well, Lisa's what everybody calls me. She said, what do you want to be called? I said, my name. My name is Alyssia. And from that day forward, I became Alysia. Allie came about from some friends. So that, I just kind of went with it. But I think, but even that, it's almost like I have these different identities. I do. I feel like I have these different identities of who I was through my life. And I feel like now I'm finding that freedom, the freedom to talk about who I was and let that go. Honor it, accept it, be okay with it, and continue to move forward in a better place because of it. Does that make sense? And I'm just
So
kind of
much
relating it to
sense.
what we're talking about. But I mean, freedom is freedom. I think of freedom in a bunch of different ways. I think of emotional freedom. I think of, I think of financial, I think of all things, emotional freedom, financial freedom. I mean, food freedom. I'm going through this thing with that, like non-diet, the whole thing. And, so it's
Yeah.
freedom can be looked at a lot of different ways. But I think what I just shared is really the essence of it, maybe.
Do you think you've found freedom?
I think I'm still finding it. I think I have, I think I'm, I think I'm in it. I'm more than have just touched my toe in it, right? I'm more than that. I think I'm in it. I think again, it's an ongoing thing. I think I'm
Yeah.
continually healing and learning myself, learning how to learning how to cope, learning how to respond, learning all those things and learning is what makes me happy, what makes me who I am. I am finding that. And I
Yeah.
think that I don't know that I think it's forever evolving, right? I don't think it's just a bam, I found my freedom. I'm done. No, I think that I
I
think it
agree.
keeps
Yeah.
going. I mean, so because life is just,
Yeah.
things are going to be thrown at you constantly.
I love that take on freedom. And you said it's constantly evolving. I totally agree. It's not a one and done. We are constantly growing and changing as people. And so what we see as freedom is going to change too. So it's just something we move towards and we change direction. It's probably not possible to attain true freedom because it's changing, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But something I want to go back to is this concept of identity. You mentioned that as a child you were called Lisa. That was your identity. But today you don't identify with that. Your name is Alyssia, and you chose quite consciously that that's how you wanted to identify. To me, that's a huge part of owning your voice. It's a huge part of owning your story. You are taking control of your narrative rather than being pushed around. Can you tell us a bit more about how you came to find your identity today? You mentioned therapy, but I'm guessing it was a whole process.
Yeah. I've had a lot of thought, like, I guess, journaling sessions or, just a lot of thoughts around identity because I think for the longest time, I didn't know who I was. Like I was a part of, I consider myself to be very flexible and adaptable and just versatile and, a part of a bunch of different groups and things. And I think that had a lot to do with that. I really didn't know who I was. And, and I feel like I have really, and I, some of that probably comes with age, but, because as you get, older women are like, I know what I want. This is, that's just a joke, but I think it does. I think age does make a difference because you learn so much and you learn from your experiences. And I have to tell you, because I didn't want to interrupt you, but a lot of my family they still call me Lisa. Everybody that knew me as Lisa, they still call me Lisa because it would be kind of like if if you said you're Rosie and you said, well, I want to be called Jane now. Well, it's going to be hard to call you. You know what I mean? So I think it's just not that they wouldn't, but I think it's just hard to change a name. Somebody that you've called that for so many years. And so I'm okay with that. I will say though, I think subconsciously, because I identify that inner child as Lisa, when I do hear somebody call me Lisa, no matter who it is, even if it's my grandmother, if I hear Lisa, I don't consciously think about the relationship that I put with it, right? At the association that I put with that name. But I think there is something subconsciously. Because when somebody calls me Alysia, it's like music to my ears. It's so different. It is weird, but it's so different. The big shift was when I became a Christian, when I found my faith, right? And then even then, I told you I kind of fell off the wagon. And for so many years, growing up as a teenager, as even a young adult, I followed different crowds. And I think I followed several groups until I really figured out who I was. I even kind of conformed myself in these groups and took on their beliefs, even if they weren't my true core beliefs, my true core values. I took theirs on to be a part of that community. And since I have, I will forever be thankful, but how I got into the space I am now. Now I have one of my best friends has been in what I'll call the healing space. She has been in that for years, and I didn't come on board with that. I just kind of thought she was just kind of woo woo, like just, okay, whatever, like, but it was because I wasn't ready to receive it. And I didn't understand it because I wasn't willing to open myself up and I listened to her, and I think she was planting seeds, and I wasn't totally closing her off, but I wasn't open to it to change anything I was doing because I wasn't ready to, my mindset wasn't ready to receive it. And what's interesting is that real quick, I'll just say, as a nurse, I got burnout. And so I started looking for other
Mm.
avenues. And that's when I fell into the wellness coach profession. And that changed my life.
Mm.
I didn't know it was going to, but it did. And I'm grateful because now I have learned how important therapy is, how important coaching is, how important it is to have a connection, and how important it is to care for yourself first. Because I have, for ever and a day, I've always put everybody, I was that person that never said no, right? I didn't say no. I would
Mm-hmm.
overdo myself. If I told 10 people I was going to do something that day, I'm going to figure out a way to do it. But I have very much learned how, you've got to take care of yourself first.
Yeah.
And I have learned that part of that, taking care of yourself, is standing firm on what you believe, on your core values, your
Mm.
beliefs, oh, I said beliefs, I was going to say morals, the whole thing. Morals, beliefs, values, all that.
Yeah, yeah.
And just really, again, the boundaries, and saying, this is who I am, this is who I am going to be. And so I have, since then, I no longer, like, if you want to know something about me, I'm going to tell you, and I'm not going to adjust it or tweak it or whatever so that it fits in your bubble, because that's what I would do before. Like, I would tell you what you want to hear,
Mm.
and that's not who I am anymore. So, because then I'm not being true to myself. And yeah.
Yeah. So much of that resonates. I have a tattoo on my arm that says stay true. That's how
I
much
love that.
yeah, like it's so important to me, and I get off that path so often, right? But I am getting better at recognizing it, and I am much clearer on my core values now. So when you mentioned
Mm-hmm.
values, beliefs,
Mm-hmm.
morals, I was just like,
Yes.
yes, I think that's a huge part of learning or uncovering who we are. Most of the listeners of this show are women, about 80-90%, and most of us are still trying to figure out who we are. Do you have any advice on where on earth you start to figure that out? Because it's quite overwhelming going, well, who am I?
Mm-hmm.
Where do you start?
Yeah, it is. It is overwhelming. And so I was saying that I had a lot of thoughts about self-identity and everything. I've, had all these little mini inner sessions, because I think a lot of, not knowing who I was, right? I think that's where to start. And I'm just thinking this through with you, Rosie, but maybe that's where you start, is
Mm.
that you become aware and recognize, okay, why is it that you don't know? Why is it that you're having trouble with your identity? Because if you, I mean, you can probably figure it out by everything we've talked about, but the reason I couldn't, the reason I didn't know who I was, and I was conforming to all these different groups until I figured it out, is because I didn't have friends growing up. I didn't know who my people were. I didn't know my tribe, right? I
Mm.
didn't know. And, it took me until I was an adult to figure out that I wasn't being true to myself by just adjusting myself to all these different, but to answer your question, so yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just like thinking all these little thoughts are coming in my head. But I think that is it, is thinking, okay, why is it? Is it because, was it something in your childhood? Did you not have friends growing up? Or is it that you were told that you had to be this certain way? I don't know if any of it will resonate with any of the listeners, but like, like domestic violence. What if somebody went right into, out of school, right into an abusive relationship? That's all they know. They identify as, they're as the victim of, you know what I mean? Like they identify as at the mercy of the person that's abusing them. Actually think of this girl, precious girl, that when I was a teenager, I worked with her at a fast food restaurant, and she was a teenager, and she already had a handful of kids. I don't remember, but I don't know if they were married, but her man, or her partner, I believe, if I remember correctly, he took her in, like, I think maybe took her in off the streets or something. So that's how she identifies as, I'm sure, his, wife or whatever he was to her, and then a mother. But who was she? Like, I think about her and I think, you know because probably a lot of the listeners too are like, well, that's what I am. I'm a wife and I'm a mother. But that's not all that you are.
Yeah.
There's a lot more than that. I'm probably totally going
Mm-hmm.
off on a tangent here. My mind is just going in all kinds of directions.
It's my favorite. No, I love
Um,
it. We are so much more than those labels.
mhm,
The most obvious one to me is job titles.
mhm. Yeah,
You meet someone, and often the first question that's asked is, what do you
right.
do?
That's right. Yeah.
That's not who you are. My job title is not my identity.
Mhm.
Okay, it might form part of it, but to me, it's right down the bottom of the list. Could be different for other people.
Yeah, so whenever recognize that you are so much more, and that and if you do have that doubt, or there's something missing, right? You might be thinking, well, there's just something missing. I don't know what it is. I think two things. One is that spiritual outlet. I think that's important. Having some kind of, prayer or meditation or something, and just trying to get in touch with that, and why you may be feeling this way. And then the other part too is either, and I'm huge on this, and because I just know that it's made a difference for me, but either therapy or coaching. And, you know, therapy's more, you unpacked like past kind of stuff. Coaching is where, you determine like kind of where you are right now and move forward. And I think there's even like, coaches, like, I'm sure there's like self-identity coaches and things like that. I'm sure, but I'm really an advocate for that, because I think it's so important to have that connection, because we are built for connection. We're meant to connect with each other, and I just don't think that there's anything that we should be doing ourselves. Like, you don't have to do it yourself, and to have somebody else's perspective and help you move through that, I think is just super important.
I'd agree. And I want to hear your take on this. I would say each of us have the wisdom inside us to know who we are, where we want to be. But tapping into that wisdom is really hard. And therapy and a coach can help us get that wisdom out. It's not, therapy and coaching isn't about being told what to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to say that we have everything within ourselves already. We have we have the ability, oh my goodness, like, just to heal, to find ourselves, find that. I think we have it all within ourselves. But like I said, you really can't do it by yourself. And somebody might be saying, well, yes, I can. I don't need anybody. No, 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 no. We are meant to connect with people. And And why? Why do
Yes.
it by yourself? You really need somebody to, even if it's just to bounce things, just to, like I said, get perspective and like a coach, for example, they're going to help you to see what those qualities are that you have, your strengths, your qualities, all those things that you have
Mm-hmm.
within you. And even though you might be thinking, well, I'm good at this, or you may know your strengths, but I can tell you that even for me, when I'm talking to somebody, or my coach, like I've had coaches and they'll say things to me that I didn't recognize. And I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't think of that, And so I think it's important to have somebody for you to be, to motivate you and, and just keep you moving in that direction. But yes, we definitely have it within ourselves. We most definitely, we just need, so I like to use analogy as far as coaching, like, so as sports, and I'm not really even a sports fan, honestly, but,
Yeah.
I like to think of like, I don't know, any sport, football, I don't know, you have it in you. And I think it's just like, yeah, you can do it, but you need your coach to, kind of steer you in the direction and motivate you and keep you
Right.
going
Right.
and pull out your strengths and say, I've seen this in you.
Such a good analogy. And for the stubborn people out there, just ask for help, even if it's something little. Practice doing that. I know for me, I used to see it as a weakness.
Mm,
Like, no, I'm a strong, independent woman. I can do it all
yes.
myself. I'm going to suffer and grind and yeah. But getting other people to help you, support you, work with you, it just, not only is it easier, but life's better.
Mm-hmm.
It opens your eyes to so much more that you wouldn't be exposed to if it was just you. You're limiting yourself by
Mm-hmm.
excluding others, I think. I'm a huge believer in connection.
Me too. And again, it all goes back to that connection. And the way I like to think about help is that if someone were to come to you and ask you for help, like, or let's say if they didn't, let's say you saw them struggling, they were going through something and they wouldn't ask for help. You, I mean, as a human, I know for me, I would be thinking, I wish they would ask me to help. Like, I wish they would tell me what's
Yeah.
something I can do, or, can I bring you something? What, you want to help. And I think that reciprocates. So you think, you know, when you're sick, you're, oh, I don't want to bother anybody. I don't want to bother.
Mm-mm.
But guess what? What about when that person was sick and you wanted to help? So I think it fulfills a human need to help someone. And I'm not maybe not using good word, terms here. There's probably better terms to use, but that's what I get. That's what I'm thinking, right? Like, so does that make sense? Like, I think it's a human need to want to help others.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
Definitely.
I have a friend that never asked for help, and she finally asked for some help, and I said, I'm so proud of you. Like, I want to help you. Like, I'm so
Yeah.
proud of you for asking.
Yeah. And it has to be them that asks. I struggle with this with my sister. She's 10 years younger. And I just want to help her. I hate seeing her suffer. It's just me and her. Our parents aren't here anymore. And I just want to help. But every time I try, it just backfires. She's not ready for the help. She doesn't want it. She needs to come to me. I can't fix anything for her. I
Mm-hmm.
can't support her
Mm-hmm.
because she doesn't want
Mm-hmm.
help. And I can't force her to realize the value of help until she gets there. So that's something I really struggle with.
Yeah.
It's so hard to just be an onlooker.
Yeah.
And I think the best thing we can do for people who aren't asking for help is just be there. So when they do come to you, you're there. I think that's all we can do. And maybe we can be a bit sneaky and plant some seeds about, asking for help. And that will help them come to the realization that, hey, asking for help isn't a weakness.
Well, even for the listeners, if it's professional help, whether it be a therapist or whether it be a coach or what have you, support groups. Hey, there's all different, I'm saying therapist and coach, but there's other avenues too. You've got support groups, you've got, there's lots of different things. And I think just being a part of that and getting in the community, I think that really helps. And just really trying to think, if it were someone that you love, what would you want for them? So what would you want for them? Do that for yourself.
We need to be kinder to ourselves. The way I treat myself or my inner dialogue is so cruel. I would never dream of treating someone else like that. But when I, try to break out of that and go, no, I need to put myself first. My life will be better. I can show up better for not only myself, but the people I love in my life. It's a win-win.
You said it. Exactly. It's exactly right. When you take care of yourself and you love yourself and accept yourself, which can be hard for many people, including myself. It has been a process. But when you do that, you're exactly right. You show up better for anybody in your circle, in your tribe, in your community. You show up better.
Communities come up a few times, and I just think it's so powerful. Surrounding yourselves with like-minded people. And when I say like-minded, I don't necessarily mean they're interested in the same things as you. That can be helpful. But they share your values. I think if you surround yourself with those sort of people, build a community, it's just so powerful and it's exciting and motivating and inspiring. It just helps you grow as a person. But I will get off my high horse about community. Is there anything as a parting message that you would like to share with our listeners? About anything?
Gosh, we've talked about so much.
We have.
I think, we've talked about caring about yourself. And I think that, and when I say care about yourself, I'm not necessarily talking about go get a massage or go, that's not what I mean. Go get a pedicure, whatever. What I mean is honor yourself and what you need on the inside to feel that freedom, whatever freedom means for you, right? Whatever it is that you need to feel that. So if it's that you need to work through some past trauma, whether you are trying to find that self-identity or, you're trying to forgive someone, find the connection or the community, right, that we've talked about. Find that. And I mean, I don't know if I can say this, Rosie, I'm not trying to promote myself, but I want to say that I would love to help. I would love to help you find resources to move forward, to do whatever it is that you desire to do, because you have one life. Well, your life right now. Some people believe differently, but the life that you're in right now, and it doesn't matter how old you are, okay? It doesn't matter if you have only one day left on this earth. Why not make it the best? Because, healing is an ongoing thing. It's something that no matter how much time you have left on this earth, why not make it the best. So,
Yeah, I love that. We deserve that, right? Each of us deserves to have the
yes, we
best
deserve
life
that.
possible.
Absolutely.
Alyssia, Ali, whichever you prefer, I just want to thank you so much for being so vulnerable, so open about your story and your experiences, sharing your wisdom with us. I have learnt a lot, and I know that people listening would have learnt a lot. It's just, it's really refreshing to be able to have an open conversation about these topics. It needs to happen more. And I hope that in some small way, I've helped you have a voice as you continue on this healing journey and uncovering who you are and owning that story. Some of the things that have really stuck with me from our conversation, I should have taken notes because there were so many, but forgiveness, whilst it's key to healing, it is not saying that it's okay. So in the particular example of abuse, by forgiving your abuser, you are not saying their behavior was okay, but you are allowing yourself to move on with your life. And it's not a one and done. Be kind to yourself. This is an ongoing thing. You are going to be triggered. You are going to be anger. Feel those feelings. Let it out and keep moving forward. I also loved our conversation about identity and how you made a conscious decision on your name and how you want people, or what you want people to call you. It was a very conscious decision. Other people can do that too, not just with names, but their gender or anything in life. Let's take control. If you let things stay the same, it's a pretty high price for most of us. Rather than focusing on what if things go wrong, it's, well, what if things go right? I don't want to stay where I am. What if it goes right? You know, your life, by the sound of it, has got infinitely better by you taking a risk and investing in yourself, not just in money terms, but in time and energy.
Right.
I need to re-listen to this, and I will when I edit it, and I know I will pick up more. I will definitely put your details in the description, and we've mentioned a few resources which I'll pop in there too. If anyone is looking for a coach, or this conversation has kind of woken up something inside them, I highly recommend working with Alyssia. She has been there. She's been in the mud. She's going through it. And I think some coaches haven't been through it. They're not on this journey, and there's limited value in what you can get from them. So Alyssia's there. She does wonderful work, has a powerful story, and I'm sure would just love to hear from you if you want to share a story or say hello. So would I. Alyssia, thank you so much again. I've loved our conversation, and maybe we'll have you back on someday soon.
I would love that. Thank you, Rose. It has been such an honor. I've really enjoyed it.
Likewise.
Thank you so, so much.
If this episode resonated with you at all, could I please ask that you share it with a friend who you think could get value from it? And whilst you're doing that, make sure you follow and subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss another episode. And whilst you're following or subscribing, please leave us a rating, preferably 5 stars, and also a written review. Doing each of these things is going to help this podcast reach more people and impact more lives, which is, at the end of the day, is what we're here to do. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Remember, you matter, you're worth it, and you are so, so capable. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you next week.